Later today, you're going to make a decision, maybe a small one, maybe one that changes everything. And when you make it, you'll ask yourself the same question almost everyone asks: what's best for me right now? But there is an older question, a harder one. And the people who built one of the longest running democracies in human history believed it was the only question that mattered. Think about how you decide things. You weigh the cost, you weigh the benefit. You think about this month, maybe this year. If you're careful, you think about retirement. That feels responsible, doesn't it? A time horizon of 30, maybe 40 years. Most people never think that far. Studies on decision making have shown again and again that humans discount the future so steeply that a reward 10 years away barely registers against a reward today. Psychologists call it temporal discounting. In plain terms, it means the future feels less real to you than the present, not just less important, less real. Now stretch that horizon, not 30 years, not 100, 140 years or more. 7 generations of human beings, most of whom you will never meet, none of whom can thank you, argue with you, or vote for you. What if every major decision you made had to answer to them? That is not a thought experiment. That was law. Long before the United States existed, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, sometimes called the Iroquois Confederacy, united nations in the northeastern woodlands under a constitution known as the Great Law of Peace. It governed how leaders were chosen, how disputes were settled, and how power was limited. And woven through its philosophy was a principle that has come to be known as the seventh generation teaching. Leaders were charged with weighing their decisions against the welfare of those yet unborn, the faces still beneath the ground, the children of a future so distant that no living person would ever see it. Sit with that for a second. Not what wins the next election, not what grows the next quarter, what serves a child born a century and a half from now. It sounds poetic. It was practical. The Haudenosaunee were managing forests, fisheries, farmland, and alliances that had to last. A hunting ground stripped bare feeds one generation and starves the rest. A treaty broken for short-term gain poisons a relationship for lifetimes. The elders understood something that modern behavioral science would take centuries to name. Left to instinct, people will trade tomorrow for today almost every time. So they built the correction into the structure itself. The long view was not a virtue you hoped leaders had, it was the job description. Onondaga faithkeeper Oren Lyons has spent decades explaining this teaching to the outside world, including at the United Nations. His message has stayed consistent. The instruction handed down to leaders was to consider the coming generations in every deliberation, to make decisions on behalf of people who have no voice in the room, not as charity, as duty. Now hold that against how your world runs. Companies report earnings every 90 days, and executives are rewarded for what happens inside that window. Politicians live on 2-year and 4-year cycles. Your social feed refreshes in seconds. The entire architecture of modern life is built to compress your attention into smaller and smaller slices of time. You are not imagining that everything feels short-term. It is short-term by design, and here is the uncomfortable part. You do it too. You take the job that pays more now over the one that builds something later. You put off the difficult conversation because this week is easier without it. You scroll instead of sleep, spend instead of save, react instead of plan. None of that makes you weak. It makes you human. Your mind evolved to handle immediate threats and immediate rewards, because for most of human existence, the immediate was all there was. The tiger in front of you mattered more than the winter 3 years out. But the Haudenosaunee were human too. Same brain, same instincts, same pull toward the present. The difference was not biology. The difference was that they built a system that asked a better question and then refused to let anyone in power skip it. So what happens when you actually apply the test? Try it on something small first. The purchase you're considering, ask the ordinary question and the answer is easy. Can I afford it? Sure. Now ask the 7th generation question. Does this choice, repeated by me and people like me, leave the world more whole or less whole for someone born long after I'm gone? Suddenly the frame shifts. Some purchases pass easily, some collapse under the weight of the question. That collapse is information you didn't have before. Try it on something bigger. How you treat the land you live on. Historians and ecologists who have studied indigenous land management in North America, including researchers documenting practices like controlled burning and rotational harvesting, have found sophisticated systems designed for continuity rather than extraction. The land was not a warehouse to be emptied, it was a relationship to be maintained. When you inherit a relationship, you don't get to spend it down to zero and hand back the receipt. Try it on your family. This one cuts deepest. The habits you model, the way you speak under stress, the stories you tell about who your people are, those don't stop with your children. They echo. A grandfather's temper can surface in a great-grandchild who never met him. So can a grandfather's patience. You are right now shaping people who do not exist yet. The only question is whether you're doing it on purpose. Here's the twist most people miss when they first hear this teaching. The seventh generation test is not really about the future. It's about you today. Because something strange happens when you make decisions on behalf of people who can't repay you. The noise drops away, status stops mattering because the unborn don't care what car you drove. Winning the argument stops mattering because they'll never know who won. What survives the filter is only what actually endures: soil, water, knowledge, trust, character. The teaching doesn't just protect the future from you, it protects you from the worst of the present. It hands you a way to tell the difference between what feels urgent and what is actually important, and most days you have no reliable way to tell those apart. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you made a decision that only benefits someone after you're gone? If you can't remember, you're not alone. Almost no one in the modern world can, and yet nearly everything you're grateful for came from someone who did exactly that. The trees in the oldest parks were planted by people who knew they'd never sit in their shade. The rights you use every day were fought for by people who died before those rights arrived. You are living in the seventh generation of somebody's decision every day. You are the face beneath the ground that someone somewhere chose to protect. That changes the question, doesn't it? It's no longer whether you owe the future anything. It's whether you'll pass on what was clearly passed to you. The Haudenosaunee influence on early American political thought has been debated and studied by historians for decades, and in 1988, the United States Congress passed a resolution formally acknowledging the Confederacy's contribution to the development of the Constitution. But the deeper inheritance was never the paperwork, it was the time horizon, a way of standing in the present with your eyes fixed 140 years down the road. That inheritance is still available. It doesn't require a council or a constitution. It requires one question, asked before you act. So try it. For 1 week, run your real decisions through the test. The email you're about to send in anger, the shortcut you're about to take at work, the hour you're about to spend, and how. Ask what it does 7 generations out. Most of your choices won't reach that far, and the question will tell you they don't matter as much as they feel like they do. That's freeing. But a few of your choices will reach that far. The question will find them, and those are the ones that were always worth your full attention. The elders never claimed the future could be predicted. They claimed something more useful, that the future could be considered, that a person in power or a person at a crossroads could pause, widen the circle of who counts, and let the unborn have a seat at the table, not because they'll ever know, because you will. Later today, you're going to make a decision, and this time, you know the older question. Not what's best for me right now. What's best for the ones still beneath the ground, waiting. Ask it once, and you'll notice something the elders always knew. The person that question changes first is you.